Okay, in section 10.1b, we also learned how to factor by grouping. So let's try another example. Let's try 53. This is again in section 10.1 on page 527 of your book. So it's 53. We have x squared plus 2x plus 2xy plus 4y. So how many terms do we have? We've got 4 terms, so we should start thinking grouping. So I'm going to group the first part. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 2xy plus 4y. And I'm going to group these two and these two together. So there's my first group, there's my second group. Now notice that the sign in the middle is a plus, right? So I don't have to change anything. Okay. So I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to start factoring. Just in my first group I have x and x squared and a 2x, so I know I can factor out an x. And I'm left with x plus 2. The plus comes down here, right? So then my second group, I see I have a 2xy and a 4y, so I can factor out a 2 and a y, and I'm just left with an x plus 2. Okay, so now again, just looking at my two groups, I have this here and that group here. It's a good thing I see a common factor between those two groups, right? My x plus 2 is the same, so I'm going to pull out an x plus 2. And what am I left with? Now remember, these are factors, so I'm multiplying. Okay, so I have an x and a plus 2y, so now I have an x plus 2y. So my answer is x plus 2 times x plus 2y. Now notice I have two factors, right? My two factors are, this is my first factor, and I'm multiplying it now by my second factor. Okay. Okay, let's try another one. So let's try number 63. And here we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 6xy plus 15y. Okay, again, take a look. See how many terms we have. We've got 4 terms, so we should think grouping. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and group my first 2 and my second 2 together. So I have a 2x squared minus 5x minus 6xy plus 15y. Okay, so let's group these. I'm going to have my first group here, and I have my second group here, right? Now, because I have a minus between my two groups, I have to change my sign of my second term of my second group. If it's a plus, it goes to minus. If it were a minus, it would go to plus. I leave this sign in between alone, okay? So now I have, if I just look at my two groups over here, I have this one and now this group. So I'm going to factor out. Between 2 and 5 I have no numerical factors, so I can't do anything there, but I do have an x that I can pull out. And then I'm left with 2x minus 5. Okay, I still have the minus in between here, I'm not changing that. And I look at my 6 and my minus 15, and I know I can factor out a 3. And I can factor out, a y as well, right? Because y is in both of those terms. So I'll factor out a y, and I'm left with 2x minus 5. Okay? So now, if I look at this group and this group, it's a good thing I have a 2x minus 5 in both of them. So that's one of my factors. I pull out 2x minus 5. and I'm left with an x and a minus 3y. So I'm left with an x minus 3y. Okay, and that's my final answer. I'm factored out 2x minus 5, right, times the quantity x minus 3y. And so those are my factors. Now remember, the reason I had to change my sign back over here is because when I put these parentheses around here, I'm changing what the math problem means. I'm implying a distribution across the next two terms. Okay? Okay, let's do one more example. Let's do number 67. Here we have 3xy minus y squared minus y plus 3x. Okay, so again we know we see four terms we're going to group, so we've got 3xy minus y squared. I group that one together. Now I have a minus in between here, so I know that if I put parentheses around this next group, I'm going to have to change that sign, the second one, to a minus 3x. The minus stays the same between them though, okay? So now let's group, let's factor, and in the first group here, and the second group here, so I see a y can factor out, so I get y times the quantity 3x minus y. And I have y and minus y minus 3x. I can't factor anything out there, but I do know that there's a 1 right in front of that second group, correct? Now, unfortunately, this part doesn't really look exactly like that part, right? So remember what we said in class. We know that 3x, remember, let's do this. Y minus 3x is really the same as 3x minus y, the opposite of that, okay? So it's the same as the opposite of 3x minus y. So instead of this second group here, I'm going to rewrite it. So I've got y times 3x minus y, and then I'm going to have a minus 1, and instead of y minus 3x, I've got a minus 3x minus y. So that would be the same as minus 3x minus y. So here I have a negative, and that becomes a positive, these two here. So I've got y times 3x minus y plus 3x minus y. Okay, and there's still that 1 in front of it. So now I'm going to go ahead and erase this top part here. And I'll go ahead and I can regroup, right? So I have y times 3x minus y plus 1 times 3x minus y. And I am now left with, I can pull out my 3x minus y here. And I've got a y and a plus 1. So I can do a y plus 1. And that's my final answer. Okay? So the key thing you wanted to remember now was this. In order for you to be able to make that substitution, you need to recognize that if you have two terms in a binomial and they have a minus between them, but they're not in the right order, it's really the opposite. Okay? So it's just another little trick.